Hello and welcome to another video to teach you about the wonderful world of Latin. Today's video will teach you about reflexive pronouns. This is one of the two types of pronouns that are introduced in chapter 13 of Wheelock's Latin. We're only focusing on reflexives in this video because the two different types of pronouns in this chapter are fairly different in their usages. So you've already learned demonstrative and personal pronouns. So today we're just going to add in another type of pronoun, reflexives. And then in our next video we'll add in the intensive pronoun, which is translated with the similar word in English, but they are used in two very different ways. So let's look at reflexive pronouns. Well, first, what does its title mean? Well, a reflexive pronoun reflects back on the subject, which is the antecedent. So it tells you what the subject of the sentence is doing and more about how it relates to itself. So here are two examples. On the left, we have a goat looking in a mirror. So if we were to describe it, we could say the goat sees itself in the mirror. The itself is a reflexive pronoun. Its antecedent is the goat. And so it's telling us what the goat is doing to itself. In the other picture, we have a boy named Narcissus looking into a pond. This is a famous myth that we'll look at more later. So Narcissus sees himself in the pond. Himself goes back to Narcissus, his antecedent, and it tells us more about what Narcissus is doing to himself. So let's look at the forms of these, and then we'll look back at how to translate our reflexive pronouns. With the antecedent of your reflexive pronoun being the subject, there are going to have to be different reflexive pronouns based on the person of your verb, whether it's first person, second person, or third person. And many of these are just like your personal pronouns. Whether it's I, the person talking, you, the person we're talking to, he, she, or it, the person or people we are talking about. For the personal and reflexive pronouns for first and second person, they are pretty much the same forms, that we don't need to learn new ones for first and second person. So when we say that I look at myself in the mirror, we just have the forms mei, mihi, me, and may. We don't have a nominative form because there can't possibly be a nominative because the antecedent is in the nominative case or is implied by our verb. So our reflexive pronoun just doesn't exist in the nominative case. For the plural, when we see ourselves in the mirror, there again is no nominative. The genitive will be nostrum, nostri, dative, nobis, accusative, nos, and ablative, nobis. And these are exactly the same forms as your personal pronouns. That's also true of the second person reflexive pronouns. When you see yourself in the mirror, there is no nominative case. The genitive is tui, dative, tibi, accusative, te, ablative, te. When y'all see yourselves in the mirror, the nominative case doesn't exist for the reflexive pronoun. The genitive is westrum or westri, dative, wobis, accusative, wos, ablative, wobis. For the third person, it gets a little bit more complicated. And that's because, as you remember, the third person can be translated as he, she, it, or they. So in our sentences, when we look at the translations, like the goat sees itself in the mirror, or Narcissus sees himself in the pond, our reflexive pronoun, itself or himself, takes its gender and number from the subject. We tend to talk about goats as objects, so that's why it's itself. And Narcissus is a male person, so Narcissus sees himself. So we take our gender from the subject. We'll take our number from the subject for our third person, and then the case from however it's being used in the sentence. So that means for the third person, we only have one reflexive pronoun for both singular and plural and for all three genders, because you understand the gender and number from the subject that you're translating with. So there is no nominative form, but the genitive is sui, sibi, say, for dative with sibi, accusative with say, and ablative with say. You'll notice that this is very similar to your singular pronouns, ego, mei, mihi, me, and your second person singular pronoun, tui, tibi, te. So hopefully the forms of this pronoun will be a bit easier to memorize. Before we look at translating it, let's just add in the reflexive possessive adjective. And to refresh your memory, what do we mean by possessive adjectives? Well, with pronouns, instead of using mei or tui or nostrum or nostri or westrum or westri to show the genitive of possession, we use an adjective. Meus for my, tuus for your, noster, nostra, nostrum for our, and wester, westra, westrum for of y'all. We do the same thing with our possessive adjective in the third person. For the other persons, first and second, we still use meus, tuus, noster, nostrum, and wester, westra, westrum. For the third person reflexive possessive adjective, we use suus, suus, suum for his own, her own, its own, or their own, instead of sui for using other parts of the genitive or other uses of the genitive case. So once you've copied all of this down, let's move on to translating with our reflexive pronoun and our reflexive possessive adjective. So let's look at the sentence, adolescens se in aqua videt. To make sure we understand how to translate our reflexive pronoun, first let's make sure we have one in our sentence. So where is it? You're right if you thought it was say, and you're also right if you said that this case is accusative or ablative. So what is the antecedent of this reflexive pronoun? And since it's reflective, it has to be in the sentence. So find it, and then we'll talk about it. You're right if you said it is adolescens, because adolescens is our nominative word, and it happens to be singular, and it could be masculine or feminine based on your sentence. Just like say can be masculine, feminine, or neuter, or singular and plural, based on the sentence. So the next question to help us translate it is to find the verb. And I'm sure you've already figured out that videt is your third person singular present active indicative verb. And it means to see, and so it's going to be the youth sees, and that tends to have a direct object. So we just need to figure out how we would use a reflexive pronoun in English. And remember, for accusative with third person, it would be himself, herself, itself, themselves. In this sentence, we could say the youth sees himself or herself, depending on what gender the adolescens is. And then we just need to add in our prepositional phrase in aqua, in the water. Once you've copied this down and made sense of this sentence, we'll translate another sentence with a reflexive possessive adjective. Okay, so our next sentence, vir avarus suam pecuniam amat. To make sure we're understanding how to translate the reflexive possessive adjective, let's make sure there's one in our sentence. So where is it? You're right if you said it is suam, because it's from the adjective suus, sua, suum. And since it's an adjective, what does it modify? Since it's feminine accusative singular, you're right if you said that it modifies pecuniam. So since it's a possessive adjective, we need to know who's possessing the pecuniam. And so think about the fact that it's a reflexive possessive. And so it's going to go back to the subject of our sentence. And the subject of our sentence is going to be the person who owns the pecuniam. And in this sentence, our subject is the vir avarus, the greedy man. And what is the greedy man doing? The greedy man loves. And what does the greedy man love? Well, the greedy man loves suam pecuniam. And we can translate that in one of two ways. We can say the greedy man loves his money, or the greedy man loves his own money. The first example, the greedy man loves his money, is a little bit unclear whose money we're talking about. It could be the greedy man's money, or it could be his friend's money. Without further context, we don't really know. So it's not our clearest, most literal translation of this Latin sentence. That is the greedy man loves his own money. The his own shows that it's going back to the greedy man. It shows that reflexive, possessive aspect of this adjective. So that's why that is the better translation. Once you're sure about how to translate the sentence, then we can move on to one more feature of the reflexive pronouns, and that's with the preposition cum. Just like with the personal pronouns, cum with may, cum is added on to the end of your pronoun. So me cum, or te cum, or nobis cum, or vobis cum. All of those are our personal and reflexive pronoun forms with cum. And that works out with se as well. So it becomes se cum to show with himself, with herself, with itself, or with themselves. All right. So once you have all of this copied down, why don't you check your understanding by completing these tasks, and once you have completed them, you can call me over to check your work, and then I will give you your homework. Thank you.